Have you ever stopped to think about our laws? I mean, are they just a bunch of rules somebody made up, or are they based on something deeper? Well, today we're going to dive into natural law theory. It's this powerful, really old idea that says our laws are tied to a kind of morality that's just part of being human. And this gets right to the heart of it. Think about it for a second. Is stealing wrong just because there's a law that says don't steal? Or did we make a law against stealing because, we all feel it's just inherently wrong? This isn't just some late-night philosophical puzzle. It completely changes how you look at what law is even supposed to be.
Yeah, that question really forces us to dig into the connection between the laws written down in books and our own internal moral compass. Are they two totally separate things, or are they tangled up together?
I mean, the evidence seems pretty clear when you look around. Why is murder illegal? I think most of us would say it's because murder is just fundamentally morally wrong. The law isn't inventing a new rule here, right? It's just reflecting a moral principle that was already there. And that suggests there's a really powerful link between our legal system and our sense of right and wrong.
This is the exact puzzle that legal philosophers like H.L.A. Hart spent their entire careers trying to solve. He was basically asking, what's the real difference between feeling obligated to pay your taxes versus feeling obligated to help a friend who's in trouble? Is that little voice in your head that says you ought to do this coming from the same place in both cases? So, before we can even try to answer a question like Hart's, we have to get clear on that one big word, morality. We throw it around all the time, but what do we actually mean when we're talking about it in the context of law? When you strip it all down, morality is really just the framework we use to judge actions. It's that process of looking at something someone does and sticking a label on it. Good, bad, right, wrong. It's all about assigning a moral value. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Morality kind of has two parts that work as a team. First, you've got the descriptive part, what we can call the is. This is just about observing and stating a moral fact, like murder is bad. But that fact almost automatically leads to the second part, the normative part, the ought. If murder is bad, well then you ought not to murder. See how one just flows right into the other? That's a really crucial step. Okay, so holding on to that idea, morality as both a statement of fact and a guide for action, we can finally see how natural law theory comes in and gives its big answer to that question we started with. So, natural law theorists, they make a pretty bold claim. They argue that law and morality aren't just connected, they're fundamentally inseparable. A law's very legitimacy, its right to even be called a law, is directly tied to whether or not it lines up with these basic moral principles. So, for a natural law theorist, a law isn't just some rule that a government enforces. No, it has to pass a moral test. It has to be grounded in a moral framework. It should help guide us to be better people. And, now here's the really radical part, if a rule is deeply immoral, it isn't just a bad law, it's not a law at all. Of course, that leads to the next huge question, right? If a law's legitimacy depends on morality, well, where does that morality come from? Who gets to decide what's right and wrong? Natural law has a very specific answer for that. The modern scholar John Finnis gives us this definition. And yeah, I know it's a bit of a mouthful, but the key phrases in there are close observation of human nature and values intrinsic to human nature. The idea is that the source of morality isn't a king or a parliament, it's us. It's found in our very nature. Let's just walk through this process to see how it works. So first, you observe human nature. You see that humans, well, we're social creatures, and we need knowledge to survive and thrive. Step 2, you identify the values from that. So you could say friendship and knowledge are intrinsic goods. They help us flourish as humans. And then step 3, you apply that to the law. So our laws should protect our ability to form communities and to seek knowledge, things like freedom of speech or funding for education. So what this all really boils down to is a massive claim. Morality isn't just a matter of opinion. Natural law theory says it's something we can actually discover through reason just by looking closely at our shared human nature. And if we can discover those objective truths, then maybe, just maybe, we can build a legal system that is truly just. And that brings us full circle, right back to the central, provocative challenge of this entire theory. If we follow the logic of natural law, we're left with this one lingering question. If a government passes a rule that completely violates these intrinsic human values, is it just a bad law, or is it not even a law in the first place? That's the powerful and controversial idea at the very heart of natural law.